Hello, everyone. We're going to give it a few more minutes here to let everyone join. We'll give it 4 more minutes and then we'll start at 3:05. All right. Looks like we're at 3:05 here. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining today. This is the second meeting of the Grievance and Appeal Log work group that we established, and I have a few colleagues here that are going to help with the presentation. And then if I can also just ask, excuse me, folks on my team to help admit folks as they come into the waiting room, since we'll be kicking off here. And I might not be able to manage that at the same time. Amanda, Erin, Summer, Carrie, do you maybe want to quickly introduce yourself? I'll start since I don't think I did. My name is Veronica Guerra, CCO Ops Deputy Director for CCO Operations, overseeing the quality assurance team. I'll pass it off to Amanda really quickly.
Hi, everyone. Amanda Peden. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the manager of the Social Health Needs and Analytics Project team, the SHNAP team, and I will pass it off to Summer.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Summer Cox. I also use she, her pronouns. I'm Quality of Care Analyst on the Quality of Care and Compliance team. I will pass it to Erin.
Hi, my name is Erin Scow. I'm an analyst on the Quality and Compliance team. I just started with OHA actually in March, so I'm excited to join this team. Go ahead, Nancy.
Hi there. Nancy Goyer on Quality Assurance team. My Quality Assurance and Compliance team. I always forget the names of the team. I will pass it over to Leslie.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Ames. I am the manager for the Quality of Care and Compliance team. Veronica?
I already introduced myself. Is anyone missing?
Anybody else?
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone. So I'm gonna share the slides here and then we'll go ahead and get started. So just a reminder for folks to make sure that you are on mute. If you are not talking. Okay, are folks, just for my own, the double check here, are folks able, what are you seeing on your end, if anything? No, nothing.
Just the gallery of speakers.
Okay. All right, let me try again. Just 1 minute, please. Okay. How about now? Can you see my slides?
Yep.
Great. And sure what's going on here. Come on. Okay, I see. Sorry, one quick second. Sorry for the struggle here. Okay, now you should be able to see the full presentation mode. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great, thank you for that. Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and get started with an overview. So we'll walk through the agenda shortly, and then we'll kind of talk through some of the changes that resulted from our recent discussions. So first on our agenda, we would like to review the grievance and appeal log and code tables. As I mentioned, we'll be talking through the changes as a result of our last work group conversation, and hopefully, that wasn't the end of it. We really want to continue to hear from all of you, and we will continue, excuse me, to incorporate changes as a result of today's conversation and tomorrow's conversation. So just a brief reminder, I guess, to ensure that you are submitting feedback, because that will be helpful, whether it's written or verbal feedback today. That will be very helpful as we kind of work through these changes to the grievance and appeal log and code tables. So first, we'll walk through some of those changes, and then we'll look at the remaining tabs. So we had a few remaining tabs in the grievance and appeal log and the code tables that we did not cover last time during our last conversation. So we'll revisit that and have a conversation about some of the changes proposed changes represented on those tabs. And then we'll move over to the grievance system report. This is the narrative document that you all have been required to submit. And so we wanted to kind of talk through some of those proposed changes with you all and gather your feedback. And we have time reserved for HR, specifically for additional conversation and discussion around the HRSN revisions that will kind of be folded in and integrated into the conversation as we go along. So just wanted to kind of make note of that, that's going to be a part of the conversation as a whole. All right, with that, I'm going to jump over to the first slide if I am. There we go. All right, so I'm going to pop open our, bring up our report here. Okay, so starting very quickly with a quick recap, and we're gonna be shifting here. I'm gonna turn to Amanda for some of the HRSN specific items, but to quickly recap the changes to the NOABD log, and we'll bring up the report here shortly with the proposed revisions, but wanted to kind of recap what we did, what changes, revisions we made following the last discussion. We, for the, starting with the NOABD log, we are going to move forward based on our conversation, move forward with inclusion of the diagnosis and procedure codes columns that we integrated into the NOABD log. And that, as you recall, was for the purpose of capturing claim denials. We already capture diagnosis and procedure codes and ask you to report on those in the PA tab, but need to also integrate it into the NOABD log to be able to kind of see that same information for claim denials. So that's the first change, and we'll pause at the end of each slide here to gather any additional feedback or comments. We also heard from you all that the proposed change to add column O, which was the issuing contractor type, appeared to be duplicative with the some of the other information. So the service type column, and then also the issuing contractor name, which was also a new addition to the report. And again, that is the issuing contractor name is column P if you are referencing the NOABD log circulated, the NOABD log tab within the appeal and grievance log report. And that was circulated last time around. And then I'm going to shift over to Amanda to talk about the last item here. All right.
Thanks, Veronica. Oh, no worries. So yeah, the last item here is really about capturing information about what is happening after a denial for members, and are they being referred over to HRS? And just to give context around that, what we're really looking for here in our in sort of our data collection strategy overall is being able to contextualize the denials that we see in the program, and also the delivered services we see in the program, among the kind of the broader landscape of how you're all addressing health-related social needs, including through flexible services. And so that's just kind of our intent behind collecting this particular data point.
Can you confirm you have incorporated that into the next rendition, or that's still under review?
We have incorporated that into the template that we'll walk through today. Is that your question? I'm sorry, Lindsay. Did I?
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
That was. Okay. That was. Okay. And just wondering if there was any concern about HRS not being a requirement and still needing to capture that, or trying to figure out that piece.
Yeah, and
it's also like not a code or anything, and so connecting the two requests, which could happen in two different systems, might be a little bit challenging. And it's already reported on the Exhibit L, so it's kind of double documenting if that member did receive that service under HRS.
Thank you. All really good call outs and points. I think one of the challenges we have with the HRS reporting, just to call it out in terms of connecting the two, is that we know that you all do report on HRS flexible services, but only above a certain spending threshold per member, so $200 or more per member. So we wouldn't necessarily see, if someone received a climate device that was under that amount that was requested through HRSN and then over in HRS. But also, I think you all had brought up in the last conversation, we just started discussing it at the end, but some of that complexity of managing things in different systems. So we do want to dig into that more with you today, for sure. I think what I meant to share in terms of adding it to the templates is that we added it for discussion today, not that we've made final decisions about how all of these data points will be captured. So hopefully that helps.
Got
as
it.
well.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies.
Yeah. Looks like Kristen has a question or comment too.
Yeah, hi. This is Amy from All Care. I do have a question about that. Maybe more of a comment, really. I mean, we do want to make sure that the member accesses their appeal rights if they do have a denial for HRSN, as it is a benefit. I think that this kind of makes it a little confusing. It applies that instead of allowing the appeal process to go forward, which is what we would expect for a Medicaid benefit, instead we're referring to a non-Medicaid benefit HRS. And I would echo the last person's comment as well. I mean, these are different systems. We're already reporting this. We don't necessarily, if someone does eventually get, say, an AC through HRS, have that tied back to the original HRSN request. So, yeah, this will definitely be a manual process, and it does seem like double reporting.
Thank you both.
I appreciate that additional feedback. And that's definitely I think all of that information is very helpful, as I said, as we work on, identifying what are the final changes that will move forward. Okay, I'm going to jump over then to the next slide, unless anybody else on my team has anything to say about this slide. Okay, I'm going to jump over then. PA log. So we heard, similar to kind of the previous slide that you just saw, we, also removed column J, the authorizing contractor type. I think there were some comments around that, both for the NOABD and PA log, and so that's been removed. And then, Amanda, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the two items here that are kind of changes from our last conversation.
Great. Thank you, Veronica. So from our last conversation, we had added in, we had discussed HRSN request source. We gave a little more specificity here around the drop-down menu that would go along with that. So thinking about requests coming from providers, open card, internal requests, and self-requests. I think one of the things by self-request, it means a member or family self-referral. So welcome feedback on those drop-down options. I think one of the things that when we get to that point, I think one of the things that came up last time around was potentially different sources within the CCO for requests and how those might be captured and kind of separated in reporting. So those are that's where we landed as a starting point and can continue that discussion. The other thing we discussed last time around was reporting on covered population for the member in the prior authorization log. And what would that look like if there were multiple populations? In most cases, people do fall into more than one of these covered populations. And so we thought through a couple of options for reporting on multiple populations, either looking at adding a number of different columns to account for every population, or just having a way for, like you do in the Exhibit L, to account for additional populations beyond the kind of primary population that you choose to report. So those are the two additions or changes since last time.
Any comments while we're on those now? Any comments from anyone? And we can definitely come back if there are comments later on, but just wanted to put it out there.
So those would only be applicable to HRSN authorizations then, correct? For all other PA requests types, those would be blank.
Correct. These would be just for HRSN.
Does that help, Lindsay? Any other follow-up questions?
Just one question, slightly unrelated. Will you be providing these slides as well? I imagine you would, but after
Yes,
the
we
call.
will drop them
excellent.
into the meeting invite after the conversation today. And can I ask,
you.
Erin, can you maybe drop the links to the recently updated version of the appeal and grievance log, the code table, and the grievance system report? Actually, the grievance system report, just for clarification, we have not modified yet. We're having a conversation about that today. So it's the version that was shared in the email that I sent before the work group started. But Erin, if I can ask you to drop the links for the most updated, or actually not the links, I'm sorry, because you all won't have access to those. Can you please download and drop the files in the chat for everyone?
Yes, I'll work on that now.
Thank you so much. Okay, we will move on here to the next slide. And then, as I said, we really want to hear feedback on some of these proposed changes. So we'll circle back to some of this shortly in some of the discussion. Okay, so those were the slides for today. I'm going to switch over the appendix just for you all for awareness purposes. This again will be attached. The slides will be attached to the meeting invite. This is just background in the appendix section related to the conversation that we had last time. So these are some of the slides that were in the included in the discussion last time around. And so there's this background slide, and then there's also the slide specific to the HRSN changes. And then again, we are highlighting, the last slide highlights the proposed HRSN related changes, which are all kind of summarized on this slide. So again, we'll provide this after the meeting today. I'm going to stop sharing here and pull up the actual grievance system report so that we can look at that together. I'm sorry, let me just quickly double check. I think we missed a slide. Yeah, Amanda? Let me quickly check here. Yes, we did not talk about the code table. I apologize. One quick second. Let me bring those back up again for you. Okay. There we go. I apologize. Okay, so we will go over the changes to the code tables. And again, these are, proposed changes following our conversation last time. And again, there are still items on the list that are being considered, and we would like to continue to hear. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate that note. I'm totally off today. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so code table changes. We've heard from all of you last time some feedback about transition of care and whether that needed to be a service type, because it's really more of a process. And so we removed transition of care as a service type from the report, and we that should be captured within code 37, which is related to care coordination. And then we heard also that there was a need to add a massage service type. So that's been added. And we've also added the outreach and engagement service type for HRSN. Amanda, is there anything you want to say there? And then I'll just maybe transition the other two over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I think that and actually it looks like we have a duplicate here on our end, so sorry about that. But we have the outreach and engagement subcategory. So essentially we had already added, Yeah, so we'd already added climate, the other HRSN services, housing, nutrition, and we generally, you don't have to authorize outreach and engagement services, but there are cases where there could be a denial. So we hadn't included outreach and engagement before, and that came up last time around. One of you flagged that, and so really appreciate that, and we added that in. And then the HRSN social risk subcategory is a place where we know, in terms of authorizing members, you're looking at covered population, their clinical risk, and their social risk. And we know for nutrition in particular, there is that separate nutrition screening. And so someone really could go through the other steps, but then not meet the nutrition screening. And so we put that in there. I think it's another area that, it's new. So we're also looking for feedback on that one today.
And it would be, and we'll go to Anna here shortly, but it would be really helpful for that social risk subcategory to know if there is another place, right, where that could potentially be subsumed. So just looking at that list of the different subcategories. Anna, do you want to go ahead, and then looks like Lindsay is after.
Oh, I was just going to ask to see which thing is a subcategory on the code tables, because I was having trouble picturing in my mind where
let me bring
subcategories live, because I think of them in like the grievance category and subcategory, but then there's actions ones, and it sounds like maybe that's an action subcategory.
Yes. So the subcategories are in the NOABD log, and then I believe there's also, I don't think they're in the it's just the NOABD log, I believe. Summer, feel free to chime in. Summer and Carrie, please feel free to chime in wherever I may be inaccurate here. But yes, it looks like it's largely the NOABD log.
Yeah, and can you pull up the actual code table document?
Sure, yeah, definitely. Let me grab that real quick.
And while Veronica's doing that, I'll just say that, you're fast. So
I had them up, Amanda.
Yeah, amazing. You're not off at all. So what we had proposed last time around, you can see it in red here, is that we think covered population, you could use 1 for that, the existing category. You could use 14 for clinical risk factor. We didn't see another one that could obviously work for social risk, but that's, like Veronica said, something that we'd love your feedback on, as opposed to adding an additional subcategory here. Lindsay, go ahead.
I think I had a couple comments on this one. This is also, so the point of this is to capture it for denials, correct? As far as like the denial reason, right?
Correct.
Okay. So because you only get one subcategory. If they fall into multiple categories, is there like a hierarchy that the plan should follow as far as which one is more applicable than others?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think we'll want to consider and get back to you. That's something actually we're thinking about right before this conversation, and realizing that would be an issue. And I think, in general, we see it as sort of the biggest funnel, right, is the covered population, and then clinical risk narrowed from there, and then social risk narrowed from there. So I think it's likely that's how we would prioritize the hierarchy, but that's something, if we did add a separate social risk, and I guess even in absence of adding an additional code, we'll definitely make clear for you for reporting purposes.
And just to clarify, Amanda's strictly speaking about, kind of the response is strictly about HRSN, but I think this is a broader question that applies for all reporting. So for all services, all denials related to all services. So we'll definitely need to consider that in kind of a few different ways. So appreciate that feedback. Anna, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, thanks. I would appreciate some guidance on what to do when they do fall into multiple subcategories, because we've run across that before. But as far as these two new subcategories, is there a reason they would not fall under subcategory 1? if they don't meet the social risk criteria, it's not a covered service, similar to if they don't meet the covered population criteria, right?
Yes, and great question. The reason for us is that we want to be able to understand the reason for denial because HRSN is complex. Well, I know all services are, but because we have this kind of multi-tiered eligibility criteria, we want to be able to see, are people being denied because they're not meeting a covered population, or is it more that people are being denied because they meet a covered population, but maybe they don't have that eligible clinical risk, or they don't have the social risk. And so that was the primary purpose for having them separated.
Okay. The other, because we've been, kind of putting those together essentially and as one reason that they don't meet the criteria, that's not a covered benefit for them because of any of these reasons. And then in the NOABD letter, of course, the member gets more detailed information.
Okay.
So potentially we could break those apart, I guess. And then my other question was about the outreach and engagement. It doesn't appear to be like a reason that it's not covered. Generally, it would be if they reach a limit for their outreach and engagement, which we're thinking of similar to like a DME limit or something where there's a set number of services or items that a member can receive that's covered. And it would generally come in as a claim unless it's been, and it wouldn't be covered unless it was prior authorized, essentially, at that point.
Thank you.
So that I don't know if that's a good question, is that just stating outreach and engagement isn't a reason. I'm not sure that's a service that's denied.
I think that, thank you for flagging that. I think that's actually meant to be, and Veronica, I don't know if it's also appearing on the service type, and maybe that's where that slide where we got a little bit mixed up on our end of adding outreach and engagement twice, because we intended to just have it in the service type. It hadn't been as a service type, so you wouldn't have been able to say someone was denied, that particular service, but it shouldn't appear here. We were only intending to add social risk, and I didn't see that until you flagged it. So thank you.
Okay.
I think that's probably right, but I'm going to just maybe quickly turn to Erin before we kind of say, yes, this is an error. Erin, are you able to kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is an error.
Okay.
So, apologize for that.
Okay, so we will we'll remove that from here, and I'm just going to go ahead and strike it so that we can remember that. Thank you for that feedback. And then can I just jump back, Anna, to your first comment and see if you can, I think I'd like to maybe understand a little bit more about what would be kind of and not just from you, but maybe from others as well, about the downstream impact if we, kind of require a call out, an individual call out for social risk criteria not being met, instead of rolling that up into number one, as you were suggesting.
Well, for us, I would need to get back with our team to see if we have those. I think we have them as separate, like, denial reasons in our system. And if that's the case, we can report them separately. Because, often we have, denial reasons that generate some, kind of member specific, more specific language than these action categories or subcategories on the NOABD letter, and then a place for the reviewer to add additional notes about specific criteria when that's the case, that will generate on the NOABD letter. So we do have a little more specificity than what's in this table. but I'm not certain if we have these two particular ones pulled apart.
Thank you. Lindsay, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I know for UHA, we have been, I think from the first rendition that went out for subcategory 14, that we were putting all HRSN denials under that category. It does make sense to report if they don't meet the covered population or eligibility requirements that we put that under category 1. That does make more sense. So I liked that comment. However, I don't understand the need, and I think we're getting a little too granular for where it needs to be for determining whether the medical necessity wasn't met based upon the social risk factor or the clinical risk factor. I think that those could be wrapped up into one. If you look at how our systems have to be built to accommodate each of these subcategories, it's pretty extensive actually. So it is a pretty heavy lift for the CCOs, and incorporate more user error when you give them a lot of options without a hierarchy of which one to select as the most appropriate. It is explained in the denial quote, as Anna mentioned, for us as well. However, you just open it to some manual error if you try to put it in lots of different buckets. So I think keeping it as simple as possible is a good idea. One clarification, if I can, in cell B14, you have EPDST and HERC, not HRSN. I think the previous rendition had, instead of HERC, had HRSN. When I think of HERC, I'm thinking of the prioritized list, which we would actually put in category 1, not 14.
I don't think the HERC change is a new thing. I think maybe what you're thinking about, if you look at cell C15, there we have the HRSN clinical risk factor criteria. I believe the HERC piece has been there, and Summer, Carrie, please feel free to chime in and correct me if I'm wrong here. But that maybe is something that we can take back to talk through. I'm wondering, so I think, so it looks like maybe we're circling around, and Amanda, feel free to chime in here, but maybe considering collapsing the HRSN, social risk criteria into an existing subcategory, which could be either subcategory 14 or subcategory 1. Maybe we can kind of take that back and think through it together, but I'd love to maybe hear additional feedback on that. And then Amanda, I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on there.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing as well as the recommendation, and definitely want to hear if there's any other feedback. Like Veronica said, I think the other thing I heard, at least from Anna, was that there may be more specificity in the NOABDs. So I would be curious if there's feedback about that as well, in terms of really being clear about whether it was social risk, clinical risk, or covered population that was the deciding factor when someone didn't get services.
And just to throw out there, it's possible that that could be something that we could get at through the review of the NOABD samples. So one change that you all may have seen for the 2025 contract is that we've proposed to remove the submission of the Hep C and ABA NOABD denials. And so it's possible that if we need, if for waiver reporting purposes and evaluation purposes, we need to be able to see that level of granularity and detail about, kind of why that service was denied, and what it kind of relates back to, then it is possible that we could have those HRSN NOABDs submitted to us, especially since we've kind of removed the submission of the other two service types that I just mentioned. So that is an option that could be possible, and then maybe that gets us away from incorporating granularity into the rest of the report, and we can just pool those samples for HRSN and have those submitted to us and reviewed by OHA at that, for that level of information. An option to just kind of float out there and for us to kind of think through together.
And was that, you want all NOABDs? I might have missed that sample, or is that just the 20 as normal?
Well, so I think what I hear from Amanda in terms of what is needed for evaluation purposes is understanding all HRSN denials. So if that were, if I have that correct, and you feel free to chime in, Amanda, then it would require it would require all HRSN denials to be submitted beyond that sample of 20.
Personally, I would rather give it to you in a report format than in an NOABD, because we have to manually pull each of those letters from the member's record, which is a lot. Creating the sample, and with the sample comes the review and the supporting documentation submitted. There's a lot to build that single submission NOABD besides just the letter. So that would be my preference. We can pull it all in a reporting, like we can give you the denial quote in a report Excel format, along with all of the information that would tell you the reason why it was denied in more of like a free text field that pulls onto our letter. I know that's just speaking of our CCO alone. I don't know how other CCO systems are built, but there's a lot that goes into pulling each record sample. More so, and that's manual, than doing this automated report format.
That's helpful. And I do, and I see Amanda, you came off of mute. Do you want to say something really quickly?
I would just
Before I
love to
continue.
understand more about that. And if other CCOs could share more about that too. But Veronica, you can go ahead. We can.
Yeah, let's dig into that. And then I was just going to say that I guess I maybe want to reiterate that if there are, let's say, we're reviewing the data and we're looking at the aggregate report and the information that's provided, there may be, a reason that we might ask for those NOABD samples to be submitted to us anyways, but obviously that would be an ad hoc request, right? Following the review of the information and really, if there's something that kind of triggers that request. So I wanted to just put that out there. But let's maybe dig in. And Anna, do you want to, I don't know if you have a comment on this piece or if it's on if we're shifting direction here.
Yeah, my comment was along the same lines that the pulling a slightly more detailed report of denial codes for HRSN denials would be easier for us as well, I think, rather than supplying all NOABD letters, because that is time consuming manual work that staff need to do. And I'd have to check in with my team, but I think it would be easier for us to do kind of an ad hoc report to pull just the HRSN denials and reasons, rather than changing all of our reporting formats and coding to prepare this report, the quarterly NOABD and PA log reports.
Any other feedback from anyone on this?
Can I also just ask then, I'm hearing that there's some, potentially it could be easier for you all, at least some, to pull a report with more detail. I also just want to return before we leave this topic to thinking about the number of the codes and the prioritization. If we were to clearly lay out for HRSN which codes, to say you should always go with one first, if they don't meet covered population, right? And then move to 14 and then move to this new social risk code. I'm also hearing that if we did add subcategories here, that would need to be very clear for those who are filling out this report. And I just want to make sure that I got that as well as your feedback, kind of generally across the board, that you need that hierarchy. Yes. Okay. Thanks, Christina. And Christina and Jill, your comments in the chat, was that related to pulling the NOABD letters as well as what would be a manual process?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to confirm.
And giving a hierarchy for YCCO, the way the system works, it's a drop down. So I'm not sure that they would be able to see a hierarchy. They're going to pick, and we do have to remember that clinicians are doing this. They're trying to get the PA done in a timeline. And so they're going to go with their first thought. And they're not really going to be like, oh, wait, there's 30 of them in here. I need to, so I think just remembering that it's a clinical person doing this, they don't even, a lot of them don't even know about this report. So, it's just something to keep in mind.
I think that's very helpful feedback. And I guess, that's really where some of the internal staff training comes in, and the monitoring and oversight to ensure that the reports are completed accurately. But definitely helpful feedback to keep in mind that the reporting instructions need to include some information around this. Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about the crossover between this report and Exhibit L. And so keeping that in mind when providing feedback for this, are you guys looking at revising Exhibit L or keeping Exhibit L and only revising Exhibit I or the grievance and appeal log? Because I think that informs a lot of our decisions. So for example, if we're reporting on denial of social risk factor, but Exhibit L is indicating the approval based upon which social risk factor, for example, then it would make sense to just do one report and include both approval and denial in one format rather than multiple formats. So we're reporting approvals in Exhibit L, but we're reporting denials in Exhibit I, which gets complicated for when multiple teams are doing multiple sections. So I'm trying to keep that in the back of my mind as trying to also provide feedback in these areas. So I just don't want to be double documenting. We're documenting the same thing in multiple places, but you know what I mean? Just a little bit of variance.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Lindsay. And I think, one of the things we are doing on the data analysis side as we're starting to work with this data is having to map across these different reports. And so kind of appreciate the complexity from this end too. And I think to answer your question, the way I think about, at least so far, the way we've been treating Exhibit L and then how we're expecting to treat Exhibit I is that Exhibit L is where we'll really look for kind of the final, what services were delivered. And you're right, right now we do have indications of whether they met clinical and social risk. Versus these this template here really only giving that information for denial. So we'd find the approved services in Exhibit L and we'd find the denied services over in here. I think what I'm hearing but want to test with you is that it might be more streamlined to have that information in one place, in terms of really being able to see both denial information, but also who received services and kind of the same sort of analysis of why they receive services, if they met kind of confirmation they met all those clinical, social, and covered population criteria. I'm reading into what you're saying and trying to process it. Am I getting at what you're saying, or can you help me out?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're spot on, but then also looking at, so we are reporting both approvals and denials on the PA log, right? But we're not indicating the covered pop, social, clinical. And then we're
Right.
reporting the denial based upon social, clinical, covered pop on the NOABD, but then also reporting the approvals on the Exhibit L, but in even further detail. So we're, and right now we have the settlement template, which is reporting it again in another way and other data elements. So I appreciate that we're trying to collect a lot of data regarding HRSN. It just seems like we're trying to make a square piece fit in a round hole a little bit, with trying to capture it and modify what we currently have in order to capture this new process, but in lots of different formats. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
You want to go
Veronica.
ahead, Amanda?
I just really appreciate that comment, and I think want to just emphasize that we are trying to make efforts here to build this in a way that's kind of the least impactful to your systems and the most supportive of how you're doing things. And so that kind of feedback is really helpful, Lindsay, because if this is making it more complex, and it actually would be easier overall to actually just focus on HRSN and put the reporting all in one place, that's incredibly helpful for us to hear. And yeah, just really appreciate that. Would love if there are other thoughts or feedback around that. And Veronica, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I would just echo that. I think we, as Amanda said, we took this path of trying to integrate this information, these needs, right, related to HRSN evaluation.
Oops, you got muted, Veronica.
So yeah, I apologize. I was actually asking my partner to please be quiet. Sorry. Sorry, I got thrown off there. So we took the path of trying to integrate information into existing reporting, because of the concerns that have been raised about the number of deliverables. So I think, and we're all kind of feeling this tension, I would say, that you just vocalized, Lindsay. And so if there are alternatives to be considered, right, similar to maybe what Amanda just stated, we definitely are open to that and want to have that conversation. If it doesn't make sense to amend Exhibit I for certain aspects of this reporting, we definitely can explore other options and move forward with those changes that do make sense and do fit into Exhibit I reporting, like the service types, the changes to the service types, the changes to the subcategories. Those are kind of low-hanging fruit and definitely are likely needed changes in Exhibit I. So just want to maybe take a moment to allow for more conversation about the concern that was just raised.
Thanks for the comment in the chat, Christina. So at least one other kind of in agreement that it would be easier to just have this all in one place and one report.
This is Jill from YCCO. We have several of us that we're like, what reporting are you doing? Wait, I'm doing this. So I think I'm in agreement as well. And some of this reporting is done in the finance space, which are totally different people than the people that work in the A&G space or the UM space. And a lot of times we don't think alike. We have a different focus. And so it's hard for us to get our points across of what we need. And, you know, and we're small, so I can't even imagine some of these bigger CCOs, how you guys are doing some of this. So I think just realizing that maybe it is easier to keep it all together in one place. And so those that need to do the reporting can work together to make it, you know, make sense to, you know, to everybody involved. It would probably be helpful.
Thank you, Jill. Really appreciate that. And I'm seeing that there are several who have also liked maybe in agreement with Christina with your chat. So also in agreement with this. I wonder if, I mean, not to put anyone on the spot, but do want to see if there's disagreement. If any of you feel like actually this absolutely not having this all in one report versus this, you know, modification of these existing deliverables is not the preference. Or if there's really general agreement that this would be simpler.
And I think I want to just maybe we do a vote count or something here, because I want to make sure that we're moving forward. If this is the path we move down to explore further, then I want to make sure we're making a decision based on the majority here. But let's maybe see if anyone has any immediate concerns to share, and then maybe we can move to a vote. All right, I'm not seeing or hearing anything. I don't see anything in the chat. So, and I don't see any hands up. So why don't we go ahead and move to a vote? If all of the represented CCOs can maybe drop in the chat your preference, whether we continue to explore inclusion of HRSN specific changes into Exhibit I, or move down this alternate path of creating a separate report for HRSN specific changes. And again, there are probably some changes that need to remain in Exhibit I. And I'm thinking they're probably largely around the changes in the code tables. But we'll need to maybe assess that and figure out if there's anything else that remains in Exhibit I. So if you can all feel free to drop in the chat your preference.
I think, Veronica, understanding what is required for Exhibit I and what is required for Exhibit L, like minimum requirements, and then that would kind of influence, at least from my own perspective, as whether having then a separate standalone HRSN would be necessary or whether it would be more advantageous to build it in. So if there are certain elements that have to be reported in each, then, you know, maybe the integration is more of the approach. I guess from my own knowledge, I would need to know what is exactly required for the quarterly reports, and then be able to understand, well, can we have one standalone report, or would it need to be separated out?
Yeah, and I think, and Amanda, you feel free to chime in here, but I'm not sure that all of this could be worked into Exhibit L. So we're likely looking at a completely separate deliverable outside of, you know, whatever you're already reporting in Exhibit L. and outside of Exhibit I. I think at a minimum, kind of just, and feel free to add on here, Amanda, but at a minimum, looking at the minimum changes that need to be captured in Exhibit I. I think again we're talking about. Sorry, I'm kind of scrolling through our changes to look here. Definitely the addition of the outreach and engagement service type and the nutrition and housing service types. We'll need that anyways for denial purposes. And then I'm not entirely sure about the social risk subcategory. I think that one depends on where we land based on what we heard today, right? The feedback that we heard about whether that could be subsumed into one of the other existing categories or if it needs to be separate. In either scenario, I guess it would be be captured in Exhibit I. It's just a matter of whether it's a separate subcategory code or not. Amanda, what do you want to add there?
Yeah, and I want maybe this is something we need to think about too, and
Sure.
come back tomorrow a bit more, because I'm wondering if we could actually, if we had a fully standalone deliverable, which I completely agree, Veronica, we wouldn't be able to put all of this in Exhibit L. So I think what I'm envisioning, but we need to like check this